open source threat intelligence program. So please welcome me, Edward McCabe.
Thank you very much. So I have to give a couple of disclaimers from the very beginning. I'm under a legal contract to do that, like most of us are. So this project actually started out several years ago, but it came to a fruition. We're all in information security. Has anybody in here ever been accused of FUD peddling? Narcissistic vulnerability pimps in the room? Okay, so this came to a fruition, and this is all in retaliation to being accused of FUD. I've been in the industry for almost 25 years now. I know bad things happen on the internet, and when I had mentioned that to somebody, they were like, "Wow, that sounds like a lot of hype and a lot of FUD." And I'm like, "Okay, where's my pointy stick?" So I started down this path of threat intelligence. So what we're going to talk today is about open source threat intelligence, specifically around the programmatic aspects of building the program. If anybody was in here in Rob Lee's class yesterday about the threat intelligence aspect, anybody? Couple? Few? Rob got a little bit more technical. I'm going to speak to a little bit more of the business aspects and getting out in front of some of these things. So a little bit of background about myself. I'm an Iowa farm boy. This is before I got into information security. I was so happy. I am a geek, which, by the way, the power consumption in my house, I need to go to Pandora or go to Jared's for my wife. Another reason why is I don't use e-readers. I'm very tactile. I like to touch things, so I have a lot of books, which means every time that we moved, my wife had to pack these. So I am a former U.S. Navy veteran. Any other veterans in the room? Thank you very much for your service. When I was younger, I actually thought I could pull off the mustache. No. I am a science fiction geek. I'm the guy in the white. There will be references throughout to various science fiction things. I'm also certified in letters and stuff, which I know that's one of the reasons why you guys came here today, was to hear somebody say, "Oh, yeah, I'm certified in stuff." So I like to play Scrabble. So I took all my certifications that I have and I put them together. And what I ultimately came out to say was something rather unique for being in information security, and that is, I see IT crimes. So, also, just to let you guys know, so anybody in here, I'm one of these, which means I also have one of these. So let's talk about threat intelligence. We've all seen this, right? We put this on the dashboards for when our executives and senior leaderships come into our office space, so we look like we know what we're doing. And it looks really pretty, right? Ooh, amazing. But what does this actually tell us as an organization? Does this tell us anything? It tells us that Norse has got a lot of time on their hands to be able to draw maps. But what if we could get out in front of some of these things? Things that we see on a daily basis. Phishing campaigns, botnets. Anybody deal with malware at all? Well, if we can get out in front of these things, we can start defending our businesses. Prioritizing our plethora of resources that we have, because we have unlimited resources for our organizations, right, to protect them. Everybody's got the budget they need and the headcount they need? Yeah, no. Ultimately, this is so that our leaders can make better and more well-informed decisions, as well as being able to reduce the impact that these activities have on our organizations. So again, today what we're going to talk about in the 40 minutes that I have, so I'm going to truncate this as much as possible, is how this all started and how to bring business value to your organization. As a 10-year veteran with the Department of Defense and having to sit through slide decks, I swear that this will not be death by PowerPoint. So there may be some snarky things that I mention. I am jaded. So in the beginning, we had the internet, and Al Gore said it was good. So again, like I mentioned, this started back in 2010 when the initial concept started and came to a fruition later on. So some of the things that I was hearing in the industry just really didn't make sense to me. Has anybody heard these types of responses from their leadership? These are things that, that just made me stop for a moment and pause and ask that question of whiskey, tango. We'll stop right there because we have kids in the room. My children were able to join me this time, so we'll go back to just drinking the whiskey. And then, of course, like I mentioned, somebody accused me of promoting FUD. That was not happy camper. I was no longer the fluffy bunny that I am known for. But of course, you know, on a weekend I spent some time and started some initial efforts. The question in my mind was, you know, does our leadership actually believe these types of things? Or is this all crazy talk that I'm hearing in my voice, or in my head? So my approach started from an academic aspect. Okay, we needed to collect the data. So ultimately I needed to get a fall guy to take the hit. So I started off very easy with a low interaction honeypot to start collecting some information. And I brought it up online in November of 2013. But that sort of begged the question. So roughly 15, 16 minutes after the fact, 34 minutes, sorry, started noticing profiles against SSH services. 34 minutes. That's not really that long of a time period from a system that just comes up online. But that's okay because they're in South Korea and they're our allies, right? That makes it all good? Okay. The second attack that I saw came in a little over a day later, but this is in Texas, so this is all good too because, you know, God bless Texas, right? Somebody asked me, you know, why did I think it was an attack? Well, one, I hadn't promoted the system that was coming online. I wasn't putting it out on Google or Bing or Alta Vista, if anybody still remembers them. It was not part of an existing subdomain. So this wasn't a system that was made part or was previously public. And ultimately because I just threw it online. Again, I was asked the question, you know, when I started reviewing the logs, I'd see stuff like this. And I'm not a developer or web guy by any chance, but I'm pretty certain that's not normal web traffic requests. So after running this for a period of time, you know, I'm very visually oriented, and I wanted to know who, you know, was attacking me. Why am I all of a sudden, you know, of importance? I'm an Iowa farm boy living in Columbus, Ohio. Go Buckeyes. So what I ended up doing was actually mapping this out. And this is all being done with open source tools, by the way. So I swore to my wife that this was not going to be a big venture, and we'll get into that in my trips to Jared later. But what we see here are indications of, you know, where attacks and probes were coming from both an SSH aspect in red, and who was sending me not nice web requests otherwise. But this could be a coincidence because I do live in Columbus, Ohio, and we have some very large organizations. So I might have been missed or perceived as being somebody that was working in one of these organizations. Do we have any NCIS fans in here? Yeah. Gibbs rule number 39. There is no such thing as a coincidence. But now this also brought up another dilemma because now I got hooked on all this data that we were able to collect. So I started off, as I said, with the Dionea honeypot, and then started getting into more creative things. So started building actual systems and putting them out there. What I like to call giving XP a new lease on life. It does have a function. It does have a purpose now. But I was replicating systems and services so that way I could collect more information to find out what exactly they were trying to do or what the adversaries were attempting to accomplish. So I started off with using Dionea, moved into Kippo. If any of you are familiar with Kippo, Kippo is a secure shell honeypot that will actually replicate secure shell services, and if breached, will give you the ability to collect the keystrokes of anything that was sent from the system once they were compromised, as well as putting actual live systems online. Which was really interesting when you'd watch like an XP box come online and you'd go check it a day or two later and yeah, it's no longer yours. Lots of rebuild time on that one. So what could I do with it once I had that stuff? Well, If there's anybody in here who's a Vin Diesel or Riddick fan, you know, you keep what you kill. So I can find out where the attacks were originating from, and I'm not going to use the term attribution because that's not my intent. My intent is to start profiling who my adversaries are. I don't care where they're from. They're doing something bad on my network. I need to protect myself. Were these automated attacks, or was this an individual behind a keyboard? In all the case studies that I was reviewing during the attack profiles, there were instances where I'd be watching the logs and you'd see somebody actually issue a backspace. Now, automated bots don't do that. And it's like the hardest thing to keep from wanting to break in on a session and talk with them and say, hey, how are you doing? You're going to be in a presentation later on. Can I get your information and send you the details? But we would actually find people who would break in, and we'd be able to watch them in real time or through reviewing the logs. We're also able to track progression of bad. When I deployed the honeypots domestically, which was an interesting concept to overcome logistically, we were able to start tracking and seeing, you know, where attacks were occurring from. Were they going from north to south, south to north, east, west, what have you? But ultimately, what were they trying to do? Were they trying to leverage the honeypot to launch additional attacks? Were they setting it up as a distributor? I will tell you that one of my honeypots did fetch me 2.5 gigs of MP3s, which made no need for LimeWire anymore. So, I mean, take it for what you will. There are benefits to it. So, at Rendition, my partner is a gentleman by the name of Jake Williams. If any of you follow on Twitter, a gentleman by the name of Malware Jake, that's my partner at Rendition. He is a reverse engineering freak who will reverse engineer a lot of data. And when we get new samples in, we'll take a look at it, and he'll do a sanitary. And every now and then, we come across something new, something that hasn't been picked up before. Guess what goes right into our arsenal? I'm lazy. I don't reinvent the wheel. From an incident response perspective, we're able to catalog it and be able to look for it on other systems. So while others are still looking to find out what bad is, we were able to take that and say, okay, now we've got a list. If anything pops up with here, we know we have something that's bad. So again, we'll go back to the genesis of the internet, or what I call the internet of bad things, because bad things happen. I'm waiting to see how this pans out with the FCC and their new push to, nationalize the internet, because that's going to work, right? We're going to tell another country, you're going to do it this way. No. We can't get Ed Snowden out of Moscow. That's pretty bad. So the original pre-commercialization of the internet, this is what it used to look like back in happy days. Now, here we are today. We're somewhere in here in the cloud. So with the commercialization of the internet came these adversaries that could figure out that they could make a buck off the internet. Criminal organizations, nation states, whoever they are, it's all about money, especially when we're talking about our organizations. So we started seeing things like this, right? We saw some bulk spam that, hey, buy our products, or hey, you're a winner. And these were all ways for organizations and individuals to part with their hard-earned capital, their money. And then we had the big game changer, the Nigerian prince. What's that?
Still waiting on my check.
Still waiting on your check? So, just a public service announcement, so all you know, you do not just simply inherit the fortune. So getting into the threat intelligence side, how to actually build the program. Well, one of the key aspects is to realize what it is. And is anybody's vendors in here and come in and said, oh, we've got this new thing called threat intelligence, and we want to sell it to you. So let's make a clear distinction between what threat intelligence is and is not. So first of all, this is not threat intelligence. It's a tool that can be used in threat intelligence, but it's not solely the internet. When we're talking threat intelligence, we're talking about both the logical aspects of the internet as well as the kinetic aspects. We won't delve too much into it. Oh, it is not just IP addresses and domain names. If you have a vendor that comes to you and says, oh yeah, you know, buy our threat intel, and they give you a list of IP addresses and domain names, kick them, smack them, ask them to leave, because that's not just what it is. There's more to it than that. Collecting stuff and not doing anything with it. We are data hoarders. That's how we have this thing called big data now. We just collect data and collect data and collect data. When we produce a report, and Rob hit this a big time yesterday, was what we do with it and how it comes across. And he gave the analogy of, you know, that we have insurgents who are going to attack this gate and nothing happens. And it can burn the relationship you have from a business perspective by doing that thing. You know, the boy who cries wolf too much, they never listen to anymore. So when you're producing it, keep it in the context of your organization and your business and in your industry. I actually had somebody who said, oh great, if we have threat intelligence, I can reduce my security staff. And I was like, no, that's not what this is for. It is not about getting rid of people. It is not a replacement for boots on the ground. And it's not a substitute for not monitoring your network. If you think threat intelligence is the end-all, be-all, it is not. It is a part in a larger program of information security. Some of the common misconceptions associated with threat intelligence, again, the list of bad. You know, why is it bad? You know, you can buy it. Unfortunately, threat intelligence programs, because each business and organization is a unique snowflake, you can't just buy it. It's a lot of vendors are now taking the approach of, you know, one size fits all, you know, the cookie cutter approach. That doesn't work in threat intelligence. You need the NSA's budget. I would love their budget, but I don't need their budget. I could do a lot of fun things with their budget. Again, the one size fits all, it really doesn't. As Rob mentioned yesterday, a vendor coming in from the outside does not know your organization like you do. Oh, and that it's only for information technology and security people. This actually plays into a larger aspect within organizations from a risk perspective. Risk equals threat, vulnerability, opportunity, you know, that model. So this actually plays into the ability for the organization, for the business leadership to actually make well-informed decisions, as long as we're providing information. Again, you don't need a multi-billion-dollar budget. It's nice, but not mandatory. The two things that you will need to have a successful threat intelligence program are two things: commitment that they want to do it, and the actual understanding. If we've all worked, how many of us come from a strong IT background? How many of our executive leaders can understand how the flow of email works within our organization or why DNS is required? Maybe a couple of us. For the most part, that's why they hired us, was so that way we would take care of that stuff. When we talk about threat intelligence, we've got to answer that question of what's going on and why it's important to them. So what is threat intelligence? Well, it's a specific program function to help organizations. Having the ability to make a well-informed decision means the difference between the valuation of a stock, opening a new plant, all these different aspects. That's where threat intelligence comes in at. It's a multi-phase cycle, so it starts at a beginning and continues. It's not a one and done, you know, we've got a firewall in, we're done, we don't have to do any more. No. Same thing with threat intelligence. It's a business program. It's there to provide a strategic advantage for our organizations. So when we start talking about the threat intelligence universe or the intelligence universe, it's very multifaceted. All these types of information play into threat intelligence, and what I'm going to focus on today are the three that impact us. So we'll look at the human aspect, what we have from an automated side, from internal to our organizations, as well as what we can get out on the internet. So the threat intelligence ecosystem, the way this all works, we have adversaries, we have our perimeter, we have our controls that we put in place, And then we have the defender's aspect. So the defender's responsibility is to protect our organizations. Do we all agree with that? Or is it just to collect the paycheck? And hoped not to be the next Home Depot or Target or Anthem. So when we start talking about planning, one of the key aspects is what is it that we want to actually accomplish? What is it that we can do? Well, we can do quite a bit depending upon what it is the organization wishes to accomplish. This requires a great deal of understanding of our organization as a whole and what we do. There is no lacking of information available. The key aspect is pulling it all together and making it usable. Being able to take that information and analyze it once we've collected it, and we'll get into that here later on. So, collection efforts. Is it accessible? Do we have to pay for it? Is it public? Is it somebody who's giving it to us and sending it to us? What is the confidence in that source? Are you going to trust it blindly? Are you going to trust a report from the FBI or Mandiant? Well, depending upon what it is. FBI doesn't have a really good idea right now of, providing all the details. Mandiant has a tendency to provide all that information. We've seen this recently with some of the stuff that's been going back and forth with the Sony attack. Originally, it was North Korea, and then they came out and said, no, it was this Guardians of Peace, and then the FBI stepped in, and then CrowdStrike started arguing, and ultimately, we're probably never going to know. I've gone on record as saying that normally nation states do not invest time to attack commercial organizations like a film industry, but giving the potential actor being bat guano crazy, it could be potentially him. Does it provide us sufficient detail associated with what we're trying to accomplish? And again, is it relevant to our industry and our organization specifically? And we'll get information in various types of sources. Again, trying to get this information in and get it distilled to a point that is usable is an effort unto itself. Because like I said, it's going to come in through HTTP, RSS. You can pull data from different sites. It's going to come in through emails, text files, PDFs, all this types of information. We've got to be able to put it into a way that works for us. Some examples of where you can get threat information from. That didn't come out well. Oh yeah, it did. These are all sources that we can use, and once we collect them and distill them into a fashion that we can consume, then we can move into the analysis, getting the information normalized into a format. So if anybody in here familiar with Stix or Taxi, couple, that's going to be the predominant format that's going to be used going forward. Can we validate the information? What is the assessment once we've done it? What does the information, what does the intelligence tell us? And then can we categorize it? And why is it important that we categorize the information in the intelligence? Anybody? Do we have unlimited resources at our disposal? We're going to have to prioritize it. So we'll start talking about the production of threat intelligence reporting. What do we do once we get all this information in? How do we report it up? Well, one, does it tell us, does it buy us any value if we can get in an information report but take no action on it? Yes, no? Still asleep? No, it's got to be something that we can actually take action on. We've got to be able to do something with it that we get. It should be holistic in the view of the entirety of the enterprise. So it should not just focus on just one little area. It's got to be flexible. You've got to be able to adjust and adapt as necessity requires, and because business directions are going to change. Yes?
Would you also sort of subcategorize that too, depending on the source of the information and your confidence in their vetting and all that? It's not just actionable, but maybe also
Absolutely. Automation is your friend. Automate where possible. So who are the consumers of the product we generate, the threat intelligence information we generate? Ultimately, it's going to fall into two categories. It's going to be either technical or it's going to be business. From the technical aspect, we're going to be able to take certain activities. We're going to be able to start being proactive and getting out in front. We're going to be able to fix things. Great, our workload just increased. But do we want to be proactive or reactive in information security when possible? Proactive. If I can reduce a lot of the background noise and attacks that are going on, I can focus on other areas, like how I'm going to level up in World of Warcraft, right? So preparation, preemptive mitigation, these are all different types of things that we can do. So when I initially started developing all of this as a concept, I looked at the open source community. Again, I told my wife this was not going to cost us any money. I was wrong. So I went, of course, with the Linux and BSD distributions. Very, very easy to set up and maintain. Robust platform support means that it'll run pretty much on anything from the bleeding edge servers now back to a toaster oven, which means I can throw it on cheap equipment. So it comes with lots of easy to use tools native to the operating system. So sed and awk and Perl, things like that. We can leverage that. Again, easy to automate. Automation is the big thing. This started out with myself starting this, aggregating the information in. I needed to automate where possible. Lots of tools available to be able to assist with gathering the information, distilling the information, analyzing the information, all available. And again, highly customizable. So at the height of my deployed honeypot, I had about 15 systems going, both virtual and physical, which getting the virtual images out to people was unique because like when I sent it to my grandmother in Iowa and said, hey, I need you to spin this up and do this, she's like, you have told me never to click the link. No, it's okay, Grandma, click the link. You tell me not to click the link. So that was a little bit of a barrier. She ended up with a new hardware system because she would not click the link from her grandson. I'm a trustable person. So I had multiple systems deployed throughout the US. Then I started coming into, how do I aggregate that information back? I needed a way to be able to track, monitor, maintain, so I started developing that. Started getting a lot of data. Anybody in here work with a application called CIF, the Collective Intelligence Framework? One. So this will look really familiar. So I like command lines. I like the dark space. I could aggregate all that information in, and now I'm accomplishing a number of aspects. I'm able to rate, because some of the organizations, Alien Vault is probably one of the leaders in being able to track and monitor. But I'm also able to map and monitor the progression of bad because I can historically see when were they first identified, what is it that they're doing, and moving on. And then I had a friend of mine, Sean, who said, great, he goes, Ed, you're not technical anymore, you're a manager. What does this tell them? So I went out and figured out how to make a dashboard of bad things and being able to put it into a way that they can consume it. Again, taking signal intelligence, distilling it, analyzing it, vetting it, and then making it visual. So again, the initial framework, what I ended up with from public and private sources, getting through the analysis stage, normalization, vetting it, assessing it, starting to ask those questions, why is it relevant to our organization or me specifically? Allowed me to identify, bad things were happening. Great. Ultimately, in the 6th generation, this is what I ended up working with. Multiple systems, multiple different applications, different types of hardware. The hardware cost money, which I had told my wife wasn't going to happen. This is also when I discovered that my wife had been binge watching, Orange is the New Black, because I'd get calls from her from upstairs saying, hey, what's going on? I was pulling in so much data on an hourly basis and having to process it that it was actually impacting her ability to watch shows, which if mama's not happy. So another circuit came up that was dedicated specifically for this, to which she told me, oh yeah, this didn't cost us any money, right? No. I can say that because she's not in here anymore. So strategically, I was able to start asking a couple of questions and getting, again, some relative answers. From a tactical aspect, from an operational, taking the information that was made available, now I was able to actually do things with it. So let's get a little bit into the aspect of the actual analysis. So what can we discover? So if any of you have ever seen your log files look like this, you know, we see things and it's like, ooh, you know, okay, root admin. Ooh. Well, let's actually put some context around that and see what these types of systems actually will respond with these default usernames and passwords, right? Because this will help us, right? Maybe not so much, because we all know that everybody's going to, that's like the first attack is, oh, let's try default credentials. Well, we know we're going to see a high level of those, and if that's what we're focusing on, we're missing the point of threat intelligence. So I started thinking about, okay, well, what about the things that are not as high on the scale? So started looking at things like combinations of the lower end of the spectrum. You know, this was rather interesting because where is it used at? Hypervisor? Ooh, that's sort of interesting. That's a new attack method model. Somebody's going after that. Anybody ever see this show up in their screen? Anybody know what that is? It's a Polycom. Not what you would normally go after, right? I mean, we would normally think that. Why would you go after a Polycom device? Well, yeah, it's networked. What are Polycoms normally associated with? VTCs. So what else can we discover? So, you know, pulling the top ones off the list, I had one that was stuck out. Now, I can tell you right now, this was a university. And somebody had actually told me, they're like, oh, you identified a university in China that was attacking you. Well, it's a research organization. They share information. Universities, colleges, they're not known for having very, very, very strong security practices in place. So I don't think I'm being attacked by them, but I did take a look at the one outlier that I had, which was rather interesting. You know, because everybody has maps in their threat intel reports nowadays. Thank you, Mandia. But what else could I actually get down into the details of? Okay, somebody's using Java to supplant this. This is rather interesting because now I can start building a profile around what the adversary is actually using. I can start forming a picture. Python-based. Any Python gurus in here? Yeah, Python does everything, right? That was an interesting one. SSH library for .NET. So this is one of the ones that I found that I thought was really unique because I was like, oh, okay, Core Lab. So I went out and did a little research and found out some information about them. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is a commercial product that you can buy. Now, if I'm an attacker, am I going to really buy something? Or am I going to leverage what I've already compromised somewhere else? I'm going to leverage that. So I did some additional digging, and this is what I came across. Oh, yeah, Core Labs had put this out a while back because there was a vulnerability in it, specifically the way it had tied to one of their databases. Well, it also had some additional aspects beyond that. Oh, can't see that. Oh, I don't have the audio hooked up. So one of the things that somebody had asked me, because I'd taken a look at the logs, and when you've been doing this long enough, you can sort of see patterns. So had the output on the left, and somebody was like, oh, you know, somebody's actually attacking. And I was like, no, that's a bot. And they're like, how do you know? So I did a time series analysis. So over a 60-second time span, 41 unique passwords were used. Anybody type that fast, just out of curiosity? What's that? Scorpion. Okay, so I've got to ask the million-dollar question. Who in here went and saw the movie Black Hat? Nobody else is in. Okay, we got 3 people. Okay. So in 25 years of doing this, I have never in my life had a nuclear reactor explode on me. I've never been whisked around the country to do things like that. We won't even talk about what. Yeah. Anyways, exactly. I'm not Thor, and I'm happy not being Thor. So, 41 unique attacks in 60 seconds. So, pulling out information like that and being able to explain, we have a bot attack that's going on. So what was I able to find out about when going back to the college earlier? I was able to find out that they really liked putty. That's where they're at. But is it really them? No. We can build the profile that whoever's using that as a jump-off point, they like putty. Now, putty, the base install, comes in what language? Let me put it this way. Putty has multiple languages that will install for you. If I'm Chinese, am I going to install the American pack? No. So again, dealing with the amount of information that we get, and we get information flooded to us, leads to having too much information. So we like to hoard data like it's a zombie apocalypse coming. And we'll have structures like this where we throw all our information at, right? Because when we get those types of reports, those emails, we just file them away, and we may give them an initial look and go from there. But does that help us any? No? All right, so we're going to pray to the demo gods, and hopefully this will work. So what do you do when you have all that type of information? Let's see if we can do this. Yeah. Well, for me, say I want to look up something specifically. Now, I've turned this into a system where my stash of stuff can now actually be accessible. I've got 5? 2? Okay. So getting back to the original questions, what was I able to answer? What the value is, we have to bring business value to the organization. So why is threat intelligence becoming more and more important now? We're not seeing a lot of new attacks. These are commodity attacks that are being re-leveraged and leveraged again. We are seeing advanced attacks. I don't believe that advanced attacks or that email phishing campaigns constitute a advanced persistent threat nowadays. But ultimately what we want to take the threat intelligence aspect from is becoming that business enabler. So from a strategic aspect, putting it in business terms, being able to answer and then take action on. And ultimately what we're going to be able to do is enhance our operations. We're going to get a better understanding of the threats, increase situational awareness within the organization. We're going to be able to take action on this, or what I like to say is hug the life out of the attack cycle by reducing our footprint, being able to take proactive approaches to that. Common challenges to threat intelligence. Number 1 is capitalism. We're seeing this in the vendor space right now. Buy our feed's the best, blah, blah, blah. It's threat intelligence. Legal and general counsel. This comes up as an issue because of the fact that when you start sharing information or collecting it, once you know something bad has happened, you can't unknow it. In legal terms, that's usually put as negligence or willful neglect. Also, perceived weakness. We've got pwned. Sharing information with others, you're afraid of disclosing too much. You lack the supporting infrastructure. or you're lacking the support and commitment of the actual leadership. The other biggest challenge is not knowing your initial environment. Context is king. You have to be able to know definitively what your environment baseline is and go from there. Also, the key aspect when working with your vendors who are trying to sell you threat intelligence, this is the key question you should be able to ask them. If they can't answer that, it's of no value to you, or limited value, I should say. And with that, it's my contact information. What's that? Oh, yes. I actually, any of the followers, I usually send out like certified stalking badges. Thank you very much. BSides Huntsville. Just squeaked it, yes.